Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. We'll be talking about the constitutional amendments in the National Assembly which are on the agenda, whether they will go forward, whether they can go forward legally. We'll be talking about that, the numbers in the parliament at the present. We've also seen different statements from different leaders asserting, as far as the government is concerned, that they can perhaps have the numbers. They do have the numbers. We've also seen the statement from Bilawal Bhutto Sardari. We've also looked at the PTI saying that the government actually, what is the reality? We'll be talking about amidst all of the foray of the statements that we've seen, also the preparations underway, and of course in the light of the Supreme Court verdict on reserved seats today, which will have its own effects, which will have its own ramifications on the numbers. But whether they will have those for tomorrow, and what do we expect as the bill is likely to be tabled, I believe, tomorrow. All of that today on Perspective. I have with me Barrister Yasser, Latif, Hamdani. Thank you for being with us today. We have with us Muneeb Qadir, who is a legal expert. Thank you for joining us today. Pervaiz Sandhila, who is with the PMLN. Thank you for being with us. Let me go to Pervaiz. Muneeb, let's start off with you. As far as this situation today, in the light of the SC verdict today, how do you see the situation? Because like I said, the statements at this time, we've also seen, of course, Maulana Fazlur Rahman, and at this time it doesn't look like he's saying he's going to go with the government. But overall, how do you see the numbers, and what do you see as the position likely to be?
So the constitutional package, as it is being called in popular media, which the government has envisaged allegedly, whereby they will be making amendments and very controversial ones, in fact, among certain quarters. They will be making amendments to the constitution, the most prominent of those being regarding having a fixed tenure for the Chief Justice of up to 3 years. That would require the government and the allies to have around 224 votes out of the total numbers of 336 members in the National Assembly. Would that be forthcoming? On one side, at least PMLN supporters, PM Shahbaz Sharif himself, they appear to be very confident that that is the case, that they would eventually be able to conjure up this amount of members voting for and in favor of the reforms envisaged by the government. But on the other hand, the time and the timing at which the Supreme Court has now produced its reply to the ECP's request, which was more of a request for clarification. And it had been, I think, hanging in the balance for 2 months, because if I'm not wrong, it was in July. It was almost 2 months ago that the ECP had, filed their questions to the Supreme Court for clarification. And now the Supreme Court, which took its own sweet time to come up with their reply, says that these are delaying.
So it's interesting, right? The timing of this verdict itself, that the fact that it's come today.
Yes, a strategic move, and I think that the timing has been intentionally placed in such a manner that this would affect the numbers that are needed to bring about any constitutional changes in the Assembly, in the National Assembly. That I was just talking about the magic number of 224, which is required by the government and its allies. That would be disturbed if you're giving 41 plus 39 MNAs to PTI.
But Muneeb, I mean, you talk as far as the situation, one of the things that this verdict does is that it very clearly elucidates that PTI's status as a political party. So, the ramifications of that, like you said, of their party, there being any chance of those independents earlier on, independent-led PTI members, or now PTI members pursuant to the SC verdict, cannot go the other way.
Absolutely. I think, see, the point is that the Supreme Court's reply, which comes today, in fact, I think that the Supreme Court has only added to the uncertainties, because they have blamed the, ECP, the Election Commission, of delaying tactics and whatnot. So just as I was saying, that why did it take the Supreme Court 2 months? Why did it take them so long to come up with this reply? And yes, they have always agreed. We have agreed, in fact, the public has agreed. I don't think that anyone has disputed that the PTI was a political party, despite the fact that the bat symbol was taken away from them. The contentious issue was not that. The contentious issue was that when the Supreme Court had itself declared that the intra-party polls were wrong, then the question was as to who was the focal person that was to be exercising power within the PTI power hierarchy. There was no organizational structure, and it was because of that uncertainty that the ECP had lost its questions at the Supreme Court. It wasn't to delay. I mean, Supreme Court is imputing intentions and attributing intentions to ECP which haven't been proven yet.
My question is, before we go into that, and I agree with you, but before we go into that, the question that independents generally, under the law, and correct me if I'm wrong, are allowed to vote for any party, right? In this situation, for example, if there are independents, then there's no law prohibiting them to vote, for example, for this bill. But PTI members cannot do that, right?
I think that for the constitutional amendments bill, even those on the treasury benches, even those within the government are not allowed to deviate from the stance that their respective parties are taking, because I understand why that is so. It's a constitutional amendment, and so you are required to be voting along party political lines. That's the norm. And yes, that is very much the case with PTI as well. But the thing is, and the question...
numbers, I mean, let me come back to you on that. I'm going to include Chaudhry Pervaiz Sandhila and then go to Yasser here. Chaudhry Pervaiz, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
As far as the PMLN is concerned, we've had statements from Khwaja Asif also overall in terms of numbers. What is the overall feeling? Do you feel that the numbers will be sufficient tomorrow as a political party, as the government? Where does the government stand at this time?
Thank you very much, ma'am, having me on your show. Yes, 100%. The numbers are complete. There are no problem at all, no issue at all. In Parliament and in also the number for Senate is complete, and the government is fully tomorrow going to make it this law. And I don't see any issue. Why tomorrow? Because of tomorrow they have a complete number. If you ask me 1 week before, they were still busy and they were still concerning that how they are going to do it. But now they don't have any problem. The number in Parliament also, number is also in upper house. They are complete. President is waiting for this. If they are going to in a president office, will be also no issue there. So I don't see any problem for the government. I don't see any problem for Shahbaz Sharif, Prime Minister. They have any issue because the numbers are complete.
But how are they complete in terms of, if you look at the party positions, could you take us through that a little bit as far as the PMLN is concerned and the PPP, and as in the absence of Maulana Saab and his numbers in the Senate, his party?
I think we should wait for the tomorrow is a much better than I tell you the number and how and what. Wait till tomorrow. If the government is not telling the number, then I should also not. We just wait a little bit. Tomorrow on the same time when you are doing show, you will see the from the people where they came. And don't forget it, after today from the Supreme Court, this is a short decision which came. Why the 41 member of they tell this is from the PTI. Why? Because of they were thinking the government is serious now and they are going to make some number out from there. And by the floor crossing, that it will be difficult for the government or that parliament member how they are going to later on. But there are few people also, 5 or 6 people from Abbottabad as well, from Vihari as well. I have a name with them. They are open. They are not with any party. They are independent. They don't have a declaration form till today. So there are a lot of options, but you wait for the tomorrow. You will see the and Maulana Fazl Rahman also.
Right, Chaudhry Pervaiz Sahib, let me come back to you. Yasser, you heard what Chaudhry Pervaiz Sahib is saying. Do you think that it's possible in the number game that we have? Because we've also had a statement by the government saying that they, if the numbers, in case they're not complete, then there would be legislation. How do you look at the situation? And in terms of independent members, which is what Pervaiz Sahib is saying, he's saying that in any case there are some independent members that can perhaps vote for them. The interesting thing is the verdict today. and the implementation of it. Do you think it's a short order? It's very, very categorical also if we look at the decision and what it means and what it says and what it expects about from the Election Commission.
I think it might be a short order, but it is still, an order that has to be implemented. I mean, they've basically said that the ECP was resorting to dilatory tactics. I mean, that's a big statement coming from the Supreme Court, right? So as far as the order goes, it has to be implemented, but the question is, when will it be implemented?
How long?
How long would it take?
And there is nothing in the decision that gives a timeline, right?
Exactly. So what you have is a window for the government to kind of capitalize on, and I think that's why the government is so confident. As long as that is not implemented, you are going to have members who are independent and so on and so forth. They might walk, across the party lines, as it were, whatever party lines those are right now, and then vote with the government. Now that number, the 224 out of 236, that's an interesting number. Some basic calculations, I came to about 210.
Okay.
That's what they can muster up. Again, a lot hinges on Maulana Fazlur Rahman. I think he is the spanner in the works always.
He's also not said categorically no. He's just said that he doesn't think that he's. I mean, I know to quote exactly. I think that he's probably the government will try, of course, to get him on board, and there's still time till tomorrow. Certainly.
Exactly. So I think there a lot of bargaining and a lot of brinkmanship is going to happen, and I think that ultimately, if the government is so confident, and the government's come out really confident. I mean, if you think about what Khwaja Asif was saying, and generally what we heard from the representative of the PMLN, Chaudhry Sahab, what we see is this confidence that tomorrow when they table it, and they wouldn't be calling this, extraordinary weekend session.
If they weren't confident, they do in fact have the numbers.
Exactly.
Right?
So I think they would be able to carry the day. I mean, they know, obviously they're in the know and we're not. But I would say that because there is that window of opportunity, I think anything can happen, and the government might just pull it off.
I think that's the importance of it. Let me go to Barrister Safi Ghauri, who's also with us. He's a legal expert, and of course, always. Safiullah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Mahrukh.
Right. Safiullah, we saw the judgment, and I'm sure you looked at it. It's to court recognized Barrister Gohar Ali Khan as the chairman of PTA. The commission cannot now turn around and purport to seek guidance from the court with regard to how the certifications are to be dealt with. So, I mean, in terms of who and what the leadership of PTI is, there seems to be a clear elucidation on that by the Supreme Court. As far as the government's position is concerned, I think the important bit, which is what Yasser here is also talking about, is the enforcement bit, right? Do you think, I mean, does the government have a window in which to go around and do this, which is what we're looking at from the preparations made in tomorrow's session? Or do you think that the Supreme Court is envisaging that the implementation should be perhaps as soon as the order has come out?
Mahrukh, so I think in their haste to pass a judgment to try and prevent the constitutional amendments from being passed tomorrow, the Supreme Court passed this short order, and the short order is flawed. And I intend to tell you exactly how it is flawed right now. So the judgment that it talks about, the filing by the Sunni Ittihad Council on which the short order has now come about, was done in July. It was at the time of filing, it did not have the new and amended Election Act. The amendment to the Election Act was made on August 9th. Now, this petition does not deal with what happens once the Election Act has been amended, and the short order does not touch upon that either. So the problem is that it deals with a previous law, but not with the new updated law, and it does not explain what to do with this amendment that has now been done by the Parliament. So the amendment very clearly was that if a candidate does not submit the party certificate before obtaining the election symbol, that candidate will be considered an independent candidate, and that the time must be in a specified time period, and now a specified time period was given in the Election Act. So what does the Supreme Court purport to do about that amendment? How will we look at that? Now, there is a way to answer this question, which is by the review petitions that have been filed by the ECP and by the People's Party. Those review petitions are still pending before the Supreme Court. So it is once the Supreme Court answers those review petitions and answers the question of the updated Election Act, only then will this be actually actionable. Before that, I think the ECP is still in conundrums because it refers to a previous law, and fine, as per previous law, perhaps PTI did deserve those seats, but not as per the new law. So that's really what the entire issue is, and the Supreme Court should have at least touched upon the Amendment Act, the Election Act Amendment Act to 2024, but they did not. So I really don't think that there is anything that can be done, and especially as other guests have also spoken, that at the end of the day, even if we were to presume that what the Supreme Court is saying is correct, there is this whole process of swearing them in. There's this, they have to take oaths under the new party. They have to appear before the parliament, and then they'll be eligible to vote or not vote. That can't happen now until tomorrow. So under any circumstances...
Let me come back to you, Safiullah. I'll come back to you. I want to go to Muneeb on this. Muneeb, what is your take on what Barrister Safiullah is saying? He's saying that the judgment doesn't take stock of the Amendment Act 2024, and therefore there's confusion which perhaps only the review will eliminate completely. What is your take on this?
Absolutely, I agree with what he said because the election bill amendments which had been made just last month, they do change the equation and they do change the dynamics in terms of the instructions that have been issued by the Supreme Court today to the ECP with reference to the 12th July judgment, because yes, the Supreme Court's judgment on 12th July did not take account of the new amendments for obvious reasons, which have been enacted in August, which means that there is a time limit, a prescribed time limit, after which independent candidates cannot, they do not have the luxury to specify which party they belong to. Then they are going to be treated as independent candidates. And I remember that back then, even in July, I had said that the Supreme Court seemed to have gone out of its way to give as much room for flexibility to the PTI as much as they could. So much so that even those 41 candidates which had not been declared to have been officially affiliated with PTI were given a chance, that you've got an X number of days within which to specify that you do affiliate yourself with PTI, and if you do, then you are going to be deemed to be PTI member. Now, like I was saying in response to your previous question to me, that the timing at which Supreme Court's so-called clarification or response to the ECP's request has come, attempts on the face of it to affect the numbers which are going to be in PTI's favor and going to be voting along the political agenda of PTI. If they were to get those, 41 plus 39 MNA and independent candidates as part of the PTI cohort. But yes, that would be highly illegal if such a thing were to be allowed, simply because in August there has been an amendment to the election bill, and the time limit which has been prescribed there within which independent candidates had to declare the party regions had not been followed by these independent candidates, with regards to whom the judgment from the Supreme Court came in July. So that is something that could very much and very well play in the PMLN's favor. And also, I think that one of our panelists on this program right now, he's from PMLN, and he's just mentioned that, oh, you're going to see tomorrow what's going to happen. So, I mean, now I'm intrigued. There might be a surprise up their sleeves. By there, I mean PMLN. I think there's a lot that is going to reveal itself tomorrow. So now I'm intrigued.
Right. I think we're all intrigued about what's going to happen tomorrow, certainly. But Chaudhry Pervaiz, no matter what happens tomorrow, as far as the PMLN as a political party is concerned, as far as this verdict, how do you look at this? Because regardless of these constitutional amendments, whether they go forward tomorrow or not, the question of these reserved seats for the PTI are a huge issue, certainly, because of the party positions. As far as the PTI is concerned, they are adamant that this would make them the largest parliamentary party if these seats actually do go to them, not only in the National Assembly but also in Punjab Assembly. If that were to happen, is the PMLN as a political party, is the government ready for this?
Yeah, I think yes, that will be. First of all, we have to wait for that because of it still is not clear, and the Supreme Court is. I mean, it's going to be happen also after this one, but it's not going to be matter. It's just a seat. For example, if PMLN get the seats, there will be more seat, and they are of course they are more happy, and they don't have this kind of the difficulty what they have today. Like they need someone. What I told you, the few people, they needed three seats, they need it in Senate, and then a few seats also needed in the National Assembly. But if this happen already, and it goes to the PMLN and go to the different parties, they will be more strong. And if it go to the PTI even, still it's not going to be matters. The PTI is not coming at least in the government. Government stay like this one because of the government is strong already. Pakistan People's Party, and you know the JUI just consider in a government. They are not in opposition, and they are not going to be in opposition as well. Because Maulana Fazlman told us.
Ji, Maulana Sahab, is he going to support you? Because it's still not clear at this time whether he's going to go with the government on this or not.
You know what, Maulana Fazlman don't want to make a lot work for 1122 because of if Maulana Fazlman today make sure that tomorrow they are going to vote, then a lot of 1122 have to go Adiala jail, because you know Adiala jail. When this news, when they see this news, it's going to be difficult for the Adiala jail. So let's wait. Maulana is just, you know, how long is Maulana with Nawaz Sharif or President Asif Ali Zardari, and they have a comfortable zone to work with these two leaders. And Maulana know it, Imran Khan or his party, what's going to be delivered right now, nothing. Only they don't want to be strong. I mean, if the government is strong, the lot of, you know, from international or locally, everything will be very fine, which PTI don't want. And Maulana know very well, if they go PTI and that everybody is on a street, Faisalabad closed, Lahore closed, and they are going to dharna siyasat or politician like this one, that will be not affordable right now. Our situation in Pakistan, you know, it's a very difficult from last.
Chaudhry Sahab, you're saying that he's keeping his cards close to his chest and he is likely going to go with the government. Let's see what happens, and you know, hopefully that will be the case. Let me come back to you on that. Yasser, legally speaking, and what Muneeb is talking about, and you know, whether do you think it's possible in terms of, you know, these seats and the fact that, of course, whether they go to PTI or not, do you think there's a chance that they can go to other parties also? Because we've seen, you know, that didn't happen, and then we've seen the verdict come in. Initially, of course, we saw that they were allocated by proportion to the PMLN and the BPP also, and other parties. Do you think there's a chance that can happen?
I think that question has been answered by the 13-member judgment. I don't think the chances are that it would be, you know, these seats would necessarily go to any other party. I think those seats now, the reserved seats for both minorities and women, are by right PTIs, you know, rightly or wrongly, that was the decision that came out. So to answer your question, I don't see them going to anyone else.
Do you think the election amendment, which is the opinion of Safi, Ullah and Muneeb, is going to make a difference to this?
Well, it would have to be seen, I think.
Or do you think it's a technicality?
It is largely a technicality, but see, I'm not too sanguine about the fact that that judgment that came out in July did not or does not completely cover that question.
Okay.
It does to a certain extent. And I think that...
How? Could you explain a little bit? Because of course we're talking about different legal opinions, and I would like to hear yours on
this. Well, certainly, because here's the thing. Look, in order to sort of go back to where this entire thing starts, with the symbol and the entire history that we've seen of this over the last whatever 8 months or so, what we see is this idea. So the reason the reserved seats, the reason why they're there is to give better representation to women on the one hand and to religious minorities. Now those seats have to be allocated to someone. If they're not, then you're not obviously, so the constitutional scheme is very clear. So in terms of that, the election amendment, the Act amendment of August the 9th, I think.
Yes.
That was, I don't think that departs from what was, but I would love to hear Safiullah on this. I don't think it departs from what the judgment said, I think that pretty much the way you have to.
Because what Safiullah is saying is also, and I'm going to go to him next, is he's saying that the time period was not followed, and the time period is something that came out in the amendment for the PTI members.
No, that's what. Okay, so here's the thing. I think with the whole, so there's, when you talk about complete justice, and remember that was the big controversy when the judgment came out. I think ultimately many of these technicalities are then set aside, and I would imagine that I see PTI getting these seats as a result. I don't necessarily see the election amendment, again I would love to hear what Safiullah says, but I don't see them as being the impediment to PTI actually going ahead and getting these seats, rightly or wrongly.
Safiullah, your opinion on this, let's hear what you have to say.
Mahrukh, I obviously don't know what the future is, but it's not a technicality. This is the law of Pakistan, and the law was. Let's be very clear that this is not something that the Supreme Court can just brush aside and pretend that it does not exist. It very well does exist, and that's why I said that maybe the short order could have been a very different short order had they covered this election amendment act in this order. Had they mentioned and they said that, all right, whilst, we were taking 2 months to decide what the whole thing, another act was passed, but we are of the opinion that this act does not hold. That would have changed things entirely, right? None of us would have been arguing about anything right now because the Supreme Court would have covered it. They would have given their opinion. But the very fact that the Supreme Court has ignored it, and the fact that there are in fact petitions that do cover it, means that now they will have to wait for those petitions, because this law that has been passed by the parliament cannot be ignored altogether. So until something of that sort happens, the fact remains that the parliament will still continue to function. They might still manage to pull off an election, constitutional amendment. And as far as the seats are concerned, I honestly see this becoming a much bigger problem than it is being treated as right now. Because the fact remains that even the judgment that did come out, the 8-5 judgment, it still does not touch upon some of the most important issues that remain within the Election Act itself, which is namely, what do you do if an election has not taken place? Are we now giving a blank check to all political parties to just go appoint leaders and not hold party elections? Because this was unanimous. This was very clearly, in no pre-descriptive words, has been decided by the Election Commission. The fact that the outcome of intra-party elections and the consequence of intra-party elections has not been discussed by the Supreme Court leaves this open wound. PTI very well may be a big party. That may be the case. But how do we move forward? Moving forward, what do we do every time a party does not hold intra-party elections? And so until these questions are answered, and these questions have once again been raised by the review petition, I don't think this matter can be resolved. And given the pace of the Supreme Court, as has rightly been pointed out, the Supreme Court seems to be very upset about the Election Commission's delay tactics. But the Supreme Court is giving short orders, not even detailed orders, short orders in 2 months on matters.
So the status of the Election Commission, that there's some comments on that also. Would you like to talk about those?
I think this is going to really lead to a clash of institutions at this stage, because in all honesty, what they've done is they've made the role of the Election Commission highly suspect. I think the PTI has been given unlimited material now to support its narrative by consistently saying that the Election Commission is biased, that it's trying to target one political party, and now that the Supreme Court has given its assent to that narrative, therefore this is going to lead to a lot of problems. And I think the Election Commission might respond in kind. We don't know, of course, but let's see how things happen. This is what all I see is increased polarization within the country. All I see is that this is just going to make things more complicated. That's all.
Let me come back to you, Safiullah. Muneeb, as far as this, let's talk about the constitutional amendment that is on the agenda. How do you look at this constitutional amendment? In terms of what is proposed, what we know about it yet? I mean, of course, we don't know the full text of what, but the main areas it deems to deal with. How do you look at that, and what's your opinion on this?
So opinion, before I give mine, is very divided among the legal fraternity, generally speaking, of course, amongst I think political commentators as well. I think one of the most contentious amendments, which I've alluded to earlier as well, is the requirement for or the plan for having a fixed tenure for the Chief Justice, i.e. of 3 years. Otherwise, previously, what used to happen was that when the Chief Justice would reach a certain age, he had to retire at that time, and then the senior most judge next in line would take the position up. So having a fixed tenure for a judge, I think that if done constitutionally, with 2/3 majority in both the houses of parliament, there is no legal controversy, and there should be no legal controversy. Perhaps people might want to read too much into it as to why this is being done. Is there some political purpose? But whatever happens in parliament happens for political reasons. So even if it is politically motivated, I don't think that there's anything wrong with that per se, because particularly National Assembly functions along party political lines. That is what it does, and it does that with the mandate of people, with the mandate of the electorate. So I think that is the most contentious amendment that has been envisaged, not so much as those pertaining to no, I think even though, so there are other amendments as well regarding the transfers of superior judges, of high court judges from one high court to another, even without their consent. And a lot of people and political experts and pundits are reading again a lot into it, suggesting that somehow the government wants to be able to manipulate and control judiciary in such a way that they are certain that the composition of the judiciary becomes pro-government. But again, before you're making such tall claims and extraordinary claims, you need to bring forth extraordinary evidence. Because just alleged...
It will very significantly change the makeup of the Supreme Court for a number of years, will it not? I mean, what we expect and what we are looking at in terms of the future, the constitutional amendment will of course change that.
Of course it will, but then the important part is that if it's done constitutionally, and if the government is able to get 2/3 majority support, and just like I've mentioned, the Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif has time and again reiterated that he's sure that whatever they have on agenda for the constitutional package, which they haven't officially confirmed what that is, they are going to get the required numbers, the number of 224, and in the Senate again the required 2/3 majority respectively. So if they are able to do that, I don't know whether they would be able to get JUIF on their side, whether they would still need more candidates, whether there is going to be defection from PTI allied independent candidates or PTI allied lawmakers in favor of the government. That all remains to be seen, but all said and done, there ought to be no controversy, neither political nor legal controversy, if a constitutional amendment is made in terms of the constitution itself. I don't see what the problem is with that then.
Right, fair enough. Chaudhry Sahab, do you think, the allegations of course are right there as far as the PTI as a party is concerned. We've seen them make allegations that, their members, independent, led Sunni Ittihad Council or PTI or whatever we may call it at this point, is going to, is being poached or is being, by the government. How would you respond to these allegations?
Look, no matter what happened in Pakistan, this is the PTI, how they are doing. Like in 2013, when it was election, you remember Imran Khan was blaming all the way to Najam Sethi, 35 pencher, and he did 126 or more than that dharna in Islamabad. So what happened was that after that, what we heard from him, what was the source of his news, and how he replied because of someone told him, So PTI is always blaming like on anything, what happened, whatever, no matter what you're going. Like look at in Punjab government, give 2-month relief 1,400 bill on an electricity bill. What they are doing, they said no problem. This 2 months they are going to leave. Next 6 months they are going to take back. So they are always blaming. Don't what is the suit them? The suit them Pakistan like a bankrupt. If you remember when Imran Khan was gone from a government after 2 weeks, he was claiming Pakistan is going to be Sri Lanka, Pakistan is going to be bankrupt, Pakistan is going to blah blah blah. But Alhamdulillah, today if you see everything is going well. Pakistan get relief from IMF, which called Imran Khan package, and after that Saudi Arabia is coming up. So that will be fine. No matter what happened, no matter what they said, what kind of the blame they are doing. They want to destroy everything. They want to stop. Look, I was a Dutch company with some Norway company, but the biggest company. They are coming Pakistan to work. They are writing a letter to them. Don't come Pakistan. If you come, your investment will be gone. Nothing is anymore. So this kind of the blame game, PTI is a master, always master. That's what they learn from first day to today. But I think Pakistani government, Pakistani people now, they know it, what Imran Khan want, PTI want, what they need to do it. So nobody care about that. The tomorrow is the day, the lot of things is going to change. And if the tomorrow this is happened successfully, what the government want, and after that you will see the lot of things will be fine also as well.
Let's see what happens tomorrow, certainly. Yasser, Pervaiz Sahib is certain that things will change tomorrow and there will be significant changes overall. But legally speaking, for what is happening in the Supreme Court at this time, the Parliament and the Supreme Court, one has to say the to and fro that we've seen in the recent past. How do you look at this?
I think this clash of institutions, and I think we spoke about it earlier as well. I think, well, let me start by saying the Parliament ultimately is the repository of the trust of the people, right? So it is the Parliament that's going to fix the number of judges, for example. Right. It is the Parliament that decides, and if this constitutional amendment, by the way, let me just say the constitutional amendments are very good, in my opinion. Again, I'm just,
you per se, you are for constitutional
I think these constitutional amendments are very useful because...
Is the constitutional amendment pertaining to the judiciary or generally?
Judiciary.
Okay.
Judiciary and generally as well. I mean, constitutional amendments are always a very good thing for any country to go forward, right? But in terms of this particular package of constitutional amendments, I mean, we're talking about increasing, one of the things is to increase the age limit, sort of bring the retirement age up to 68. Which
all over the world we've seen,
yes,
in the US particularly, we know that...
Yeah, the US doesn't have any.
That doesn't have any.
And then you see the thing is having a fixed tenure instead of, having Chief Justices come in and go for 6 months or a year or...
Depending on their seniority
exactly,
and their age,
I think it gives the person on top a certain, certain amount of there's a certain security to what he's going to do. I mean, you can't just have Chief Justices changing every 6 months or a year or so into their tenure. So I think that's a very good idea. I would imagine that something like this was long overdue.
But do you think it can be looked at as person specific at this time or not?
That would be an unfortunate way of looking at it. I mean, it is, there is this idea, this perception that perhaps they want the incumbent to stay longer. I mean, that's what it is. But if it is, if this is a rule that is being made for all times to come, till if there's another constitutional amendment.
And of course, it pertains to all
exactly.
Judges.
It doesn't hurt anyone. I mean, the next Chief Justice would similarly have, a similar tenure in office. I think it's a very good thing to sort of resolve this right here and now. Now that's where the parliamentary and the question of parliamentary sovereignty vis-a-vis the Supreme Court comes. I feel that there are times when the Parliament also goes ahead and sort of takes on. I mean, there are incidents.
You're saying that the ambit of the power that's given to the Parliament or the Supreme Court, I mean, you're saying it, at times one feels that perhaps that ambit should be followed.
Yes, I think every institution should stay within their lane, right, as it were. I think the Supreme Court shouldn't be infringing on parliamentary prerogative, and the Parliament should definitely not get into the question of whether law is being interpreted rightly or wrongly. And there've been incidents where the Parliament has come out, basically fighting, saying, you know, that the Supreme Court has said this or that in a certain judgment. But that aside, if ultimately for a parliamentary democracy to work, we have to accept that Parliament has certain prerogatives that need to be respected, and one of them.
And we come from a school of thought, you know, of the Commonwealth, like we were earlier talking about, where the example to quote that the blue-eyed babies, I mean, you know, of the Parliament, that it is really up to the Parliament to decide, to choose whatever they want to legislate on. It doesn't have any limits as far as that is concerned.
Exactly, and our entire history is full of that. I mean, whenever the Parliament has gotten its, you know, decided questions of faith even, you know, so the Parliament does have that
power, right, because we are at the end of the day a parliamentary democracy. Safiullah, I'd like your quick comments before we close overall on the situation with regard to the Supreme Court and the Parliament, and what do you foresee?
Mahrukh, I think it's overall, like I said earlier, and I'll agree with all the guests here who have spoken out very clearly, especially Yasser, Latif, Hamdani, that this is all positive. The reason why the country is doing these things is so that we can move forward. We need to move forward economically. The country is in a very bad shape. We have some major investments coming in. Massive oil wells have been discovered. Anything that is going to stop the economic progress of Pakistan at this crucial moment should be at least looked at with a degree of suspicion. And I think some parties want that. They want consistent problems. They want consistent protests. They want to lock down Pakistan so that our economy does not progress the way it ought to. I feel like there is a certain degree of resolve that I'm seeing. And the fact that we've already discussed that, you know, the judges, I'm not even a big legal mind, but if I can see that they're making some basic legal errors and they're taking too long, then I think it also goes on to show that there is a certain degree of mala fide within the Supreme Court, which will now be weeded out if things go according to plan.
Thank you so much for being with us. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have. Thank you for joining us, Barrister Yasser, Latif, Hamdani. Thank you for being with us. Muneeb Qadir, thank you for your time. Barrister Safiullah Ghauri, thank you for being with us. Pervaiz Sandhila, thank you for being with us today. Overall, of course, we will know what happens tomorrow with regard to the constitutional amendment. But of course, we do at the end of the day have a functioning parliamentary democracy, perhaps a flawed one. But the question is that the parliament is free to legislate. When we talk about a 2/3 majority, of course, the question is, does the government have that support? Will they be able to have the numbers? And that is the question at the end of the day. Let's see what happens tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining us today on Perspective.